Greetings there. Welcome everyone. This is Jed Schlackman. I'm a spiritual healer and holistic counselor based here in Miami, Florida. For this current video, I'll be looking into some of the energy medicine and subtle energy physics implications of current dynamics in our society in healthcare, including how infectious illnesses can play into these subtle energy types of issues that we'll be discussing. And for the purpose of this video, I'll be sharing some information, reading from an article by a physician in Russia who's involved with an organization called the Pulse Academy. And the Pulse Academy provides technology and education about using electromagnetic biofeedback technology or devices to help with diagnosis and subsequently, in a sense, with guiding treatment for whatever health concerns people may be coming to their physicians or their practitioners with. So it's an energy medicine approach that includes the use of technology. So it combines both the past and the future, in a sense, or the East and the West, in terms of healing philosophies, where we're able to use this modern technology, our computer systems, electromagnetic sensing devices, and so on, along with traditional understandings of health and medicine, things such as Ayurveda and Oriental medicine. So we're going to look at this particular article now, which is called Pulse Spectral Analysis from a Perspective of 2020 Socioeconomic Disasters. And they're referring to the current COVID-19 situation, which, aside from whatever medical implications, the global response to it has provided or created a lot of socioeconomic disturbance and unrest. So the author is Sergei Fedotov, and he starts out here by saying medicine will become a real science only after solving the mechanism of the origin of life. Here there is a tiny contribution to the solution of this problem. Studies of the phenomena of traditional Chinese medicine have led to the emergence of hypotheses that stipulate the law of daily activity of acupuncture meridians on the base of models of universal ether, that's spelled A-E-T-H-E-R, and the Doppler effect that arise in the ether stream when our planet rotates around its axis. So the ether is the fifth element. It's understood to be the spiritual energy source or zero-point field or source field from which physical reality ultimately arises. So it's another layer or density of energy that is in some sense the governing source of the energy flow coming into this reality. That's what I'm adding here to clarify for those of you who may not know or have heard of what the ether is meant to represent. The existence of the word ether explains the presence of the world ether explains the presence of gravity, which is erroneously called by the term attraction in modern physics. More plausible is the idea that gravity is caused by the movement of the ether wind in the center of the planet. The ether wind is manifested in form of a sail effect when it creates a force that presses all objects to the surface of the earth. A logical question arises, quote, and where does all the ether that flows toward inside the planet disappear? The answer is simple and almost obvious. All the inflowing ether goes to the synthesis of chemical elements. This process always begins with the formation of protons, which, depending on the spectrum of vibrations and the general density of the ether wind, participate in the synthesis of the appropriate chemical elements. This assumption echoes the theory of hydride Earth by V.N. Larin, which attempts to explain the fact of the constant release of hydrogen from the bowels of the planet into the atmosphere. Due to the constant synthesis of chemical elements, the amount of matter inside the Earth is constantly growing, causing an increase in the geometric dimensions of our planet. The substance seeks to occupy the surrounding space, breaking out from the planet outward in the form of gases forming the atmosphere, in the form of green prominences of grass and trees, in the form of living organisms, and in the form of people dreaming of interplanetary spaces. Expansion in all manifestations of being is a fundamental physical consequence of the compensation of the ether pressure and a manifestation of the Le Chatelier ground principle. If you take a closer look at the events and phenomena of life, you can notice other effects that arise from the action of ether. Ether creates not only the chemical elements of our material world, but also organizes their functions in a very specific way. Let us evaluate the structure of the pulse wave in the form known to all as the photosphygmograms from a certain point of view. And there's an image or illustration of this pulse wave phenomenon, of these wave peaks that occur. So that's the photo of this phygmogram of pulse wave. How can this pulse wave form be interpreted? Obviously, if we take into account the hypothesis of the presence of external ether pressure, the points V1, V2, and V3 in the diagram on the graph will be the moments of increased ether pressure, and the sawtooth shape of the pulse will be formed by the fronts V1-P, V2-T, and V3-D at the moments of falling pressure. Answering the question about the reasons for the sharp drop in ether pressure, we can appeal to the types of chemical reactions that are, from an energy point of view, either endothermic, going with energy absorption, or exothermic, generating energy or outputting energy. Taking into account that energy is a physical measurement of the momentum, it is easy to come to the conclusion that a periodic dropping of the ether pressure can be a consequence of a pulse of proton synthesis in the depths of the Earth at a time when the pressure of the ether has reached a certain critical value. Thus, we come to the conclusion that the pulsation process in living organisms itself occurs solely for an external reason, and there is not even a tiny sign of so-called self-organization of the processes in relation to chemical reactions. There is the alternation of periods of pulse synthesis of chemical elements, protons, and relatively long periods of decay of the synthesized elements. The process of changing of ether pressure over time forms a fractal tree on the branches of which the pulses of all living beings are distributed in the whole variety of their own frequencies. In the light of such a physical paradigm of the origin of the pulse waveform, it is interesting to look at the structure of stock signals known as Elliott waves. And there's an illustration or diagram here, a chart of the structure of Elliott waves. It is easy to note that the structure of the stock's commodity price is identical to the shape of the pulse wave of sphygmogram. See figure 2, points 1-2 are similar to the front of the pulse signal, and points 2 to 3 correspond to its falling segment. Such coincidences are unlikely and once again confirm the common base of all the physical phenomena of our world based on the physics of ether motion. From an expanded perspective, these phenomena are predetermined and is actually formalized by the hexagrams of the Book of Changes, the I Ching, from Chinese philosophy, where each line is supposed to correspond to a specific spectrum of ether vibrations. The combination of the vibrations in the spectrum at the moment determines the behavior of the oscillatory system in the future. Each ether pressure rating is a resonant compartment, a locus of a certain frequency. With increasing ether pressure, the modulus of the resonance frequency increases. Living organisms differ from non-living at the following peculiarity. As complex resonance systems, living organisms able to use changes in the rhythms of ether pressure in order to maintain their functional integrity. For this aim, living systems have adapted to synthesize the necessary substances at moments of ether dropping of pressure, and then use the synthesized materials during periods of relatively high pressure to search for food and make other activities that support the life process. Thus, the natural behavior of a living organism as a resonant system is completely predetermined by external natural rhythms. Violation of natural rhythm is punishable by a rapid loss of vibrational energy expressed in the loss of health or metabolic balance, and it is accompanied by premature death. The inevitability of the action of natural ether pressure rhythms is noticeable even on economic activity in the form of synchronous changes in the prices of exchange-traded instruments. This is completely logical since economic activity lies directly in the sphere of activity of living people whose functionality is predetermined by the rhythms of the ether's wave motion. From the above represented position, the physical model of the organism should be a circuit diagram of chains of oscillators. Oscillators are excited at a certain nominal of ether pressure and transfer the accumulated vibrational energy in form of electrons, orderly movements to the next oscillator corresponding to the new pressure rating. It is supposed exactly this mechanism underlies the wave-like motion of the excitation of pulse in all parts and systems of the organism, including the mechanisms of movement of fluids and blood. The primitive approach of professional sanitary engineers and plumbers, based on the hydraulic theories of fluid movement in the body, may have a place in an extremely narrow range of permissible conditions, but they are completely unpromising for the understanding of real processes in living tissue. The apparent five phases nature of the pulse wave, it can be seen in the sphygmogram in figure 1 as the following segments: P-V2, V2-T, T-V3D, V3-D, D-V1. This structure reflects the qualities of our three-dimensional space. Oscillators form a cubic structure where five faces coordinate with the external medium through the sixth face. The sixth face serves as a window for transmitting vibrational energy both inside and outside for the cavity resonator, similar to what happens in the magnetron chamber of a microwave generator. The five-phase pulse wave is also the manifestation of the five elements traditional Chinese medicine theory. The cargo cult description of the physical processes of oscillations in a resonator of three-dimensional space. And that is why, without objective measurements, this theory is almost impossible to use. Most Chinese regard this theory as a cultural heritage. The electrical circuit diagram supporting fluctuations in the structure of the pulse wave may look as follows, and in figure 3 in the article you'll see it showing this electrical circuit-like diagram showing the organs and this energy movement through these different meridians related to the organs. So you have the gallbladder, the lungs, the stomach, the pericardium, the urinary bladder, and the heart. So this is an electric model of acupuncture meridian oscillators in Chinese medicine. In this scheme, and even system of meridians of traditional Chinese medicine is represented here, the functional system through which the exchange of vibrational energies proceeds with the environment is the pericardium. The pericardium, that's the area around the heart, is triggered during changes of the ether pressure in the medium. During the phase of the pericardium activity, a vacuum is created in the venous circulatory system. Pericardium is associated with the venous system, the veins, the blood vessels. This action increases the potential for blood movement in the arterial system. The pericardium phase forms the front of the sphygmogram of the pulse wave and consists of 3 segments. And there's another chart or figure here, figure 4, showing this, the phase front of pulse wave. And it says it is usually smoothed for a healthy person. This period coincides with the structure of the Elliot's waves. The front of pulse triggers the first oscillator. In this case, it's the meridian of the urinary bladder. Urinary bladder, in accordance with changes in the ether pressure in the external environment, must transfer the vibrational energy toward the next oscillator associated with the heart. Further, the vibrational energy over time, synchronously with changes in the parameters of the external pressure, will follow through all the remaining 4 oscillators, and in the end it will resonate again with the pericardium at the frequency like at the beginning, but multiplied by 2. The cycle closes simultaneously with the arrival of the next impulse of changes of the ether pressure in the environment. So we have this sort of wave cycle, this movement of energy waves through the meridians and coming back to the start of the sequence and then repeating that same pattern again. Thus, the total number of oscillators in the system is equal to 8. The traditional Chinese medicine theory has information on the properties of 8 trigrams, which in our model corresponds to local oscillators of the 3-dimensional resonator, according to the number of vertices of the cube. Combinations frequencies of local oscillators form the interference frequencies of each face of a cubic oscillator. The structure of biological oscillators is formed by a genetic apparatus consisting of a set of 64 codons. All of the above described models show the inextricable association of the living organisms with the physics of the wave motion of the ether manifested in oscillations. Health is the ability of a living organism to form and maintain its resonant structures in such a way as to correspond to every moment of the dynamics of ether density. Oscillations of the ether are an unlimited source of energy, and while the structures of a living organism resonate with the order of these vibrations, like musical string together with a tuning fork, life can last indefinitely. The only limitation is the ability of a living organism to adapt quickly when the wave parameters of the ether change during the evolution of the universe. The death of a living organism is a natural result of the loss of synchronization with the ether vibrations. And the tasks of the future medicine will be not the treatment of some endless sorts of misunderstood symptoms, but the search for mechanisms of independent, accelerated adaptation of the body as a complex of biological oscillators to constantly changing parameters of the ether vibrations in the medium. Exactly this ability to maintain the synchronism of resonance processes both inside the body, between organs and functional systems, and in relation to the external ether medium will ensure the integrity and continuity of biological existence. In the light of the represented here oscillation model of the organism's structure, we have the right to discuss regarding the causes of viral and bacterial epidemics. It is known, quote, that human evolution took place along with the trillions of microbes that inhabit the human body and create complex adaptive ecosystems fitted to the environment and form the host's body, which are precisely tuned to the permanently changing physiology of the organism. The microbiota imbalance is associated with numerous diseases, including inflammatory bowel diseases, multiple sclerosis, diabetes mellitus, allergies, asthma, autism, cancer, etc. End quote. What can happen to microbiota in the case of loss by an organism of resonance of biological oscillators on the background of changes of environmental rhythms? Certainly a microbiota, due to its higher adaptability and due to shorter life and reproduction cycles, is likely to be ready to produce fast and an immediate effect on the structures of organisms in order to prevent the leakage of vibrational energy as the main life resource. And the quickest way to restore synchronization will be only horizontal gene transfer. It will give the opportunity to accelerate the construction of new modernized structures of organisms to get full vibrational correspondence with the external environment. Such an ambulance allows organisms to restore the oscillatory energy in close symbiotic cooperation with microbiota. Thus, the penetration of the virus into the cell is supposed to be a win-win process aimed at surviving in collaboration. This is a logical method of accelerated adaptation to the rhythms of the environment. And from this point of view, the symptoms of the disease are the active phase of the metabolic processes to carry out the, quote, burning of, quote, garbage of inadequate biological oscillators. The garbage is actively replaced with the help of the DNA of viruses to repair and correct the DNA of the host to synthesize new resonant structures. Such a situation in the paradigm of modern Western medicine would look like a process of acquiring immunity. From the point of view of the truth of the presented hypothesis here, it is proved by the very fact of the mass disease. This can be explained by a certain factor that begins to act simultaneously on a large population of living organisms. The author suggests such a factor as a global change in the resonant characteristics of the surrounding ether medium. In order to continue their biological existence, living organisms are forced to adapt quickly, and sick and weak organisms, as a rule, are faced before or with an impossible task. With such development of events, quarantine measures are harmful in all aspects, An organism that has not received the possibility of adjustment or immunity remains at risk of rapid death in the new wave cycle of the ether. At the same time, the infrastructure of the economy is collapsing. Changes in the ether pressure usually lead to dramatic climate changes. An economy destroyed by ignorant quarantine voluntarism may not be able to cope with this challenge. This is fraught with the collapse of civilization and a return to a primitive society with high mortality and the need for animal-like biological survival for many years. Vaccination, due to unawareness of the real resonant physics of the ether, is doomed to failure and will increase mortality in the relatively long run. And on the other hand, vaccination increases the possibility of a real pandemic due to decreased immune level with wrong vaccine formulas. Moreover, there is a huge question regarding the quality of food. The remedy, usually that each human uses at least 3 times a day. Why we must use vaccines but not healthy food and vitamins. And there is the question, who is who spelled here with capital letters WHO, in the light of the last fake pandemic. The work should be carried out in a completely different direction, taking into account the forecasts of changes and resonances in the surrounding ether environment. This is already possible, and on the basis of the formation of a way of life for people to be more healthy and able to adapt when new conditions in nature arise. And the technology developed by our research team can help to settle these issues. So that's the end of the article by Sergei Fedotov from the Pulse Academy. You can find the website where that article has been posted. It's also been on their Facebook page, pulse-academy.com. That's pulse-academy.com. And you can learn more about their biofeedback technology, the pulse spectral analysis devices, and how they are used and how they are assisting physicians in the field of medicine, especially holistic medicine. So with all of that information in mind there, I want to point out that from an energy perspective, whatever's happening chemically, biologically, is ultimately being guided and governed by what's occurring at an energetic level. So the body is responding to this biofield or aura, and if your body is out of balance, it means there's some disturbance in the equilibrium or integrity of that energy field. That energy field is always interacting with other energies in its external environment, and it has to continually adapt and keep a certain amount of balance or integrity. So if you have a lot of stress in your surroundings, whether it's stress from electromagnetic fields, stress from chemical toxins, stress from psychological energies or pressures that seem to be placed upon you, that's all affecting you energetically. And when the energy flow coming through your body is disturbed in that way, the body goes into some form of stress reaction or adaptation to try to handle it the best it can at the physical level, to try to compensate in some manner. So let's say your body starts to have a drop in oxygen or some other nutrients, or there's a buildup of toxins or biological waste in your body. Well, the body might use these microorganisms these bacteria and viruses to make use of their capabilities to in some way process or cope with those circumstances. So in that sense, these microbes are serving your system. They're not really attacking you or at war with you. The problem is if we don't understand this and we don't take corrective measures to rebalance or refresh our energy, to nurture our body with the chemical elements or nutrients that it needs to help restore its balance, then those processes involving the microbes can kind of go to an extreme where it will appear that the microbes are proliferating, they're spreading out of control. But really it's kind of a last-ditch effort to help you recover or help you cope with the stresses that you're under. So we want to look at things from a more holistic perspective and address the causes rather than trying to merely react to the symptoms. Certainly if you take antibiotics that stop the activity of bacteria, then a certain set of physical disease symptoms may diminish or disappear, and that temporarily may keep you alive in a sense. It may temporarily allow you to feel better, but if some of the underlying issues don't get addressed in the meantime, then you may soon experience the same type of illness again, or an even worse illness. Fortunately, in many cases, when we temporarily take these actions to stop symptoms or stop a disease process, we are actually able to rebalance ourselves in the meantime. So it does appear that we've recovered, and we attribute our recovery in those cases often primarily to whatever medical intervention has been provided. But in actuality, it's often very much other factors that are the true reasons why we've recovered. We may recover regardless of what conventional or alternative medicine interventions are applied, since our consciousness and energy system are always seeking to adapt and to maintain our balance with our environment or our surroundings. Now, if our energy and consciousness, what you might call our spirit, is preparing to leave the body to conclude the incarnation, then that departure or that withdrawal of energy can produce a variety of symptoms of illness, and we blame the illness for the person's death, but ultimately it's the withdrawing of energy that's the reason that the body is starting to break down and deteriorate. And in those scenarios, no matter what intervention you may apply at the physical level, whatever types of supplements or diets you might give someone, whatever medications, whatever frequency therapies you might provide, the person may still pass on, since their field of energy and consciousness is no longer choosing to be connected to or infusing its essence into that body. So there's a certain amount of humility involved with working in the healing arts, where we ultimately can accept the will of that spirit, of its ultimate desire or intention, and we can't force life to continue in that context. I hope that this video has given each of you some things to think about or ponder, perhaps given you an expanded perspective on health and illness and how we adapt to stresses and challenges that we encounter in life. with the many waves of energy that come through our reality, we are always in some way adapting or coping, handling how things are shifting or transforming. So if there is some major shift occurring on our planet, then we can expect a variety of seemingly unusual phenomena to occur that could include waves of illness, it could include climatary changes, it could include shifts in activity of volcanoes and earthquakes. So those phenomena are related to things going on at that deeper level or density of energy. We could think of it like there's a higher consciousness that is manifesting this greater reality, and that consciousness can have different patterns, different cycles to it, to how it wishes or intends to guide the evolution of life, the evolution of society on this planet. So these are all curious things to consider, and I appreciate each of you for having curiosity and wishing to understand or explore more about these topics. For those interested in spirituality and holistic health, I invite you to view my website, which is phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. For now, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.